The modern attack surface is vast and permeable, extending from the data center to the cloud and device edge. Security teams are stretched thinner and thinner as they try to cover this ground. The result? More high-profile breaches hit the news every day. Don't let your organization be next. ExtraHop delivers security from the inside out, helping enterprise security teams detect threats up to 95% faster and cut staff time to resolve by 2/3 or more. Act with confidence. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Keep your company and products relevant, competitive, and reliable by standardizing your security framework to protect intellectual property, become a reliable business partner, and guard financial and customer information. Standards Connect is an online standards management solution from ANSI. It's Standards Access Simplified. Standards Connect is a cost-saving, fully customizable solution for entrepreneurs and companies that spend $2,000 or more per year on standards and want to translate spend into a subscription model, want to simplify access, search, monitoring, and collaboration, or need a centralized hub of standards for multiple users at one or more locations. Get a free trial at securityweekly.com/ANSI. That's /ANSI.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian. These days, it's rarely a case of if you'll be hacked and more a question of when. Once the attacker is past your defenses, they cover their tracks and systematically infiltrate your network to steal information or shut down your business. You need to rethink the way security is delivered for your digitally transformed business, and there's one security solution that delivers it all: NetScout. Get visibility without borders for consistent detection, mitigation, and prevention across any network, data center, cloud, 5G, and more. Learn more at securityweekly.com/NetScout. Security Weekly will be at Hacker Halted in Atlanta, Georgia this October 10th and 11th. EC Council is offering our listeners a 15% discount to sit for any other bootcamp courses or workshops. Visit securityweekly.com/Hacker Halted to register now. Also, register for our upcoming webcast with ISC Squared and Security Weekly's very own Evaluating Security Vendors Without Losing Your Mind by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. If you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, please visit our on-demand library at securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, Paul, we had a great segment with Eric kind of going over the different trends in our space. This is a chance for us to update everyone kind of on, all right, a little more of the details, what happened last quarter. So we'll get into it.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So I posted the graphs on the wiki, so anybody who wants to see the graphs. As everyone knows, I tracked this Security Weekly 25 index. It's the top 25 security pure plays. That means Cisco, Synopsys, a few others aren't on this list or on this index because they aren't pure play security vendors. And every quarter I kind of update you on where's the index and how it compares. So the index closed at 1,157.83 on Friday, July 12th, which is an increase of 15.78%. But that's down from last quarter. The markets took a little bit of a hit with the trade wars, and the security market, the security index, is down. What's interesting is the NASDAQ's fully recovered. So the NASDAQ closed at 8,244.15, which is an increase of 24.25%, and that's up from last quarter.
Oh, so if the red is the NASDAQ.
Yes. And so what you see in the graph is you start to see the separation of the NASDAQ to the blue line, which is the Security Weekly index. The NASDAQ has been recovering
better. Yeah, performing better and recovering at a higher rate than security.
Yeah, and on Friday, I think all the indices hit records highs, but the Security Weekly 25 index has not fully recovered yet. So the security market's a little been muted a little bit in this last rebound. So I just thought that was interesting. Early on in the index, we saw some interesting separation between the Nasdaq and the index. This last quarter, you really see it in the tracking.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let me give some summary of earnings from Q2. Now, results posted in Q2 are for Q1 of 2019. And revenue beat by 1.25% on average, but that's, again, down from last quarter. So we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown on revenue beats. We're also seeing the same thing on earnings beat. Earnings beat was 12.64% on average, also down from the previous quarter. So I think part of the reason, Paul, the indexes struggled a little bit to fully recover is we saw a little bit of suppression in both revenue and profit from Q1. And so some of the stocks have not recovered at the same pace.
Does that have to do with deals closing in Q1 in security?
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many factors, right? But
yeah. So we saw a really good Q4. So here's what happens potentially at the end of the year. Hey, got a deal. Let's get it in.
Let's get it closed.
Make some incentives, get it closed. Well, that takes part of your Q1 pipeline and potentially brings it down. So that means maybe Q1 wasn't quite as full of deals because you pulled some of those into Q4.
Yep.
Q4 was a really good quarter for a lot on the index. And so, yeah, that's potentially part of it. Now what you're doing is you're rebuilding those pipelines. So it'll be interesting as we move forward. How are we seeing acceleration of revenue and profit or not? A couple companies turned the corner from a profitability perspective, which I thought were interesting. SailPoint and Rapid7 both turned profitable in those quarters. That's huge news when it comes to our industry, because if I'm an investor, I'm looking for profitability. Only 11 of the 25 companies tracked in the index are currently profitable. And so I'd like to see more of the security companies turn into that profitability range. I think that creates a longer-term investment opportunities for those public companies.
Cool.
Let's see. I also grab all the analyst dating, right? So all the analyst ratings, average was 1.46. Now that's actually stronger buy signal than last quarter. And that may be due because some of the companies, took it a little harder in Q4. There's a couple companies that are stronger buy ratings now. Sophos, for example, who has missed the last couple quarters, has a stronger buy rating right now. And there's a couple others. So the best rated by the analysts actually are Verint, which we don't talk a lot about Verint. We don't see a lot of news on those folks. Followed by Rapid7 and Radware. Again, Rapid7 turning profitable last quarter.
Yeah, made an impact with
improve their analyst ratings.
Analyst, we mean investment analyst, not industry analyst, as we typically use the term analyst on the show, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And Rapid7's market cap is actually ahead of Tenables now. And a lot of it has to do.
So they've been doing really well lately.
Yeah, they have. They've been doing really, really well.
Awesome.
Worst rated is SecureWorks, followed by Symantec and F5. Now, SecureWorks surprised me a little bit. I personally like SecureWorks from look, I need managed services. I think the small to medium enterprises are going to continue to look to managed security service offerings to help augment some of the things they do just because they can't get the staff potentially. But it's not rated well by the industry analysts.
Right. And those can be two totally different things in terms of whether or not SecureWorks is going to do a great job for you and help your company versus what they're doing on the market are sometimes mutually exclusive, right? Most of the time, actually, right?
Most of the time. Yeah, I mean, the industry analysts are looking at the financials and going, is this a good investment or not? They don't see it yet. I think there is a lot of growth that the MSSPs, including SecureWorks, can capture in our industry. So I'll keep an eye on these. Symantec took a hit. last quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously lots of rumors on the block right now. Is Broadcom going to buy Symantec?
Yeah, and they've been acquiring companies too. So, to get those companies to contribute to the profitability and the numbers, right, takes time at that scale. So that'd be my guess as to why they might have had a weaker quarter that affected their analyst ratings.
Right. And now you see somebody like Broadcom coming in who bought CA last year, now looking to snap up somebody like Symantec. And to Eric's point, if the deal goes through, it's probably a $15+ billion acquisition.
Sure.
It would be the largest in our space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A couple best performers. I always like to who performed best based on what the analyst said. Zscaler again. Zscaler performed extremely well last quarter, and Splunk. Splunk had a really good Q1 of 2019. Worst performers: Varonis and Symantec. Now we kind of see why Symantec's ratings are down. So yeah, that was kind of the public market where the big companies are.
Cool.
One big IPO, as everybody knows, CrowdStrike went June 12th.
You should have got it. Everyone should have been in on that, right? But not everyone has a crystal ball either.
No, I mean, look, we've tracked CrowdStrike for a long time. They were a sister company to Tenable. I've always liked the tech. Customers rave about what CrowdStrike does. Their price range. So I pulled some numbers because I think this is interesting. The original IPO price range was $28 to $30 a share. It opened at $56 a share.
Crazy.
Okay, and then it closed on Friday at $73.50. So if you take the low end of the IPO range at 28, that means CrowdStrike is up 162.5% since its IPO in a month.
We'll see where it stays, though. Right?
True.
Because
yeah.
Well, and it's we know from previous experiences, right? You can't necessarily dump it all when you want to, right? Your hands are tied depending on any kind of investment, right? Any kind of stock purchase, you might be locked in.
Yeah, but there seems to be a lot of excitement about this stock. And even with a 6-month employee lockup, the lockup period will come off towards the end of the year.
Yep.
Right around June 12th or December 12th, sorry, 6 months after their IPO. So later this year, we'll see what the stock does. But there seems to be a lot of interest in the stock right now. I think a lot of people like the model. It's a cloud-based offering. They're just getting a lot of great press. We did talk to Eric, who's next from an IPO perspective. Tanium's been hanging out there for a while.
They have.
He mentioned a couple others.
Sumo Logic, I know, was a couple of years ago at Black Hat. There was rumors that they were getting ready for IPO.
Centrify, who we've talked to in the past as well, looking to go. So there's a few others. Ping Identity.
Yep.
SailPoint's had some really great quarters. I think there is an opportunity for Ping at some point. Andre, that was bought by private equity, I think a couple years ago.
Yeah,
so
I think you're right.
If the market stays hot, you could potentially see Ping coming out as an IPO, which would be really interesting. They're Denver-based company here in Colorado. That would be a really nice local win. For Colorado. Private companies, some interesting funding. As you heard from Eric on the last segment, we're at $5 billion in funding for the first 6 months of the year. Last year we did $6.8 billion total for the entire year. So we're on track to just crush it. Some of the big ones I was tracking, I told him I had a half a dozen. I have 5 over $100 million. KnowBe4 was $300 million Series D. That's a big round.
It is.
SentinelOne, $120 million Series D. Sumo Logic, $110 million Series G. So notice that Series G, they're getting up there, right? Which means they're probably right at that cusp of, do you raise or do you go IPO?
Right.
Yeah, CrowdStrike took $100 million about 6 months or so before their IPO, maybe a little longer than that. This might give us a little idea on timeline for Sumo Logic. Based on that raise and looking at the historical CrowdStrike raise, I think CrowdStrike was about 6 to 8 months before their IPO. So maybe Sumo Logic's early next year if they just raise another 110 in a G. Auth0 was 103 million Series E, and then Vectra 100 million Series D. So those were the big financing rounds last quarter.
Sentinel-1, I think, is really one to watch as well. That's the one I believe I really like their technology, if I remember correctly. And they're on the endpoint side, similar to CrowdStrike. But I've done some briefings with Sentinel-1, and their approach is really sound. So it doesn't surprise me they're taking on more funding and such.
Yeah, it'll be interesting now that you have CrowdStrike and Carbon Black Public. Who comes out next, a Sentinel-1, a Tanium, what kind of valuation do they get, and what does that do to the endpoint market? Remember, you're only going to get probably so many exits on the endpoint side, and then the question is who's left not on the public side. It'll be interesting to see because there's still a lot of endpoint players that are private.
Cool.
Some interesting acquisitions, 2 sponsors to this program. So we had two last year, right, Paul? Javelin and Layered Insight both got acquired last year. We had 2 sponsors go through acquisition last quarter. So we might see some records this year too. The big one was Recorded Future by Insight Venture Partners for $780 million.
Eric mentioned them.
Yeah. And remember, when Insight Venture Partners came into Tenable, it's about a $280 million deal. And at the time, that was one of the largest funding rounds.
Sure.
This is another $500 million on top of that. This is a huge acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really big.
What was the other one?
There's a couple more in here. Twistlock by Palo Alto was $410 million. That also got combined with the PureSec acquisition. I think the PureSec piece of that was smaller, so I didn't put it on this list.
Yep.
But Twistlock at 410. I mean, that's a big number. Remember, I came out of Layered Insight in the container security space. To me, that's a huge valuation on that acquisition.
And they've already started integrating them with their technology at Palo Alto. They've already been making plays, which you don't often see actually post-acquisition. They were actually pretty forthcoming with this is how we're going to use this new technology with Twistlock and PureSec. So making an application play in a big way.
Yeah, very quickly. And that's that kind of shift you're seeing from the network players into the space, which is interesting. One of your favorite companies, Veridin by FireEye for $250 million.
Nice. Yeah, that was my pick for breach and attack simulation. So I hope they keep pushing them and continue to grow because their technology. And if you're an enterprise, my opinion was you're looking at breach and attack simulation. It's one of the stronger players in that space.
They got swallowed up by FireEye. Endgame, another sponsor by Elastic for $234 million.
That was interesting because Elastic is not necessarily a security company. A lot of security tools and open source and are using their Elastic platform for security. But to see them make an acquisition like that in security, I thought was pretty telling and pretty big.
Yeah, this reminds me of Splunk back in the day. Remember, Splunk was really good on the logging side, realized they could use this for security. Elastic, kind of the same thing, right? A lot of people use the Elk stack, Elastic, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, to build a SIM-like solution. Elastic starting to take that core indexing capability and starting to move it into security use cases. Now they make a major acquisition like this with Endgame. It'll be interesting. It looks very Splunk-like to me in the way they're executing on some of this.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then the last biggie, Red Seal by Symphony Technology Group for $100 million. Now,
and Red Seal was the one that changed CEOs earlier this year when we were at RSA. Was that
Red
different?
Seal?
I think that was Red Seal. They do the attack simulation via configuration kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So they got new leadership, and now they're acquired. So
got acquired. Yeah. So I knew Red Seal back when I worked for RSA. Red Seal, Core, Skybox. I looked at all of them when I was at RSA as potential acquisitions to fill in kind of between the Archer platform, GRC, and the NetWitness platform, what we were doing in log. And I saw a really interesting potential fit of bringing in some of that simulation, configuration capabilities. I looked at all of them back then. They made some changes in the management structure. Then they get bought out for $100 million. Interesting, because my guess is that wasn't a really good valuation, because Red Seal's been around for a while, and I think they've raised some good funds since. But hopefully the technology can move forward. They've done some really interesting things on overlaying vulnerabilities through the network path to look for pinch points in the network. But maybe there's newer technology that does it better now. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while, but acquisition nonetheless.
Cool.
A couple hot startups I wanted to cover. So a couple of these we know. Edgewise just raised 11 million Series A, zero trust microsegmentation. They are a sponsor.
And the more I work
ours.
with Edgewise, the more I really love their solution. I really do.
Yeah, so they're doing this zero trust microsegmentation where they can control, it's to the application, right? It's the ability for users to work with certain applications and trying to create a zero trust boundary around those apps, right?
Yeah, they've made some huge improvements. Peter was on the show a few weeks ago and was telling us about some of the things. Yeah, it's awesome. It's the right approach. Really smart people there.
Yeah. Prevalian, I believe you interviewed Karim.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Evidence of Compromise, right? They were out looking for command and control.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you interviewed them on ESW when I was on vacation, but they just got a Series A funding. Very interesting technology detecting command and control traffic.
Sweet.
And then the last one on my list was Deepwatch, which is a managed security service provider that spun out of GuidePoint Security.
Yes.
So at InfoSec World, we went over and stopped in to see these guys, and that's when we learned that they were part of GuidePoint Security. Well, now they've been funded as a separate entity outside of GuidePoint to continue to deliver on their managed security services offering.
Yeah, and I think that market will continue to grow. You'll see some consolidation there, is my guess, as well.
Yeah, I think the MSSP market continues to grow for a while. You got some new entrants, and you've got some big legacy public companies out there. So we'll see how that goes. So that's all I had, Paul, for this week.
Awesome. That's a great update. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.